Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm doing a late recording here. There was a tweet on X or a post on X by Dr. McCall on the H5N1 cattle bird flu issue. All right, he posted this today. Now, or I should say, because I'm recording this late, he posted it, I believe, on April 26th. So he's mentioning that there was some gain of function research that's going on here, and I think it's important to explain to the public what the possibilities are, and I'll go into details of this in another video, in a subsequent video about the sequencing that we're dealing with here with the Clade. Now, in his tweet, he had this picture that's coming from USDA. All right, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they were testing some dairy cattle, and they detected H5N1, which we knew about. All right. Now the clade that they detected was 2.3.4.4b. Okay, and this is happening in Kansas, Idaho, Michigan, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, South Dakota, and Texas. All right, now, now what's interesting here is that you can see here on the bottom part of this picture here, there's a research project that was in collaboration between the US, the UK, and China. All right. And it's when they do this research, this gain of function research, they're trying to predict what's possibly going to mutate in nature to understand the effects. Okay. So they have this project number. Okay. And you can write this down. Right. So this is the emergence of some sort of more virulent avian flu. All right. It started on April 1st. This project started on April 1st, 2021, and it's going to end February 28th, 2026. Okay. This cooperative agreement. What is interesting is that, just a side note that seems to be unrelated, Barrick's funding for SARS-CoV-1 started on April 1st, 2001. All right, now this project here, as they were saying, is this, unifying approach is to examine how virus strains from the H5NX, especially Clade 2.3.4.4, may emerge. They're also looking at H7N9, which is the one that I'm worried about. And then there's also lineages that are the H9N2. So we need to worry about H5N1, H7N9, and H9N1. Now, let me stop the share on this. And I want to go to the whiteboard here. Hopefully this all will work. So the whiteboard. They updated the Zoom, so I got to figure out how to show whiteboard. New whiteboard. Okay. Now, it's okay. It's working. All right. Okay. There's two. There's the point that I'm making here is that you have this clad that clade that they're looking at. All right. And all right, they have the cows, right? I apologize for my drawings. All right. You know, you got the cows, right? And they're doing the testing, right? And through the testing, they're getting clade 2.3.4.4b. Okay. Now we don't know exactly what changed in the sequence, right? As a baseline. Now the baseline is going to be 2.3.44. So the question is, what's the difference between these two? Okay. I'll look into it. Now, so they test these cows from these different locations, several different states, and they're getting this, all right? But they're probably getting like slight variations of this, you know, in different locations. So it's like most likely it's really, you know, let's say Michigan, for example, it might be Michigan is getting 4.4B .1, and maybe New Mexico is getting 2.3.4.4 B .3, and maybe Texas is getting 2.3.4.4 B, maybe also the same as Michigan, right? So you get these locations that are slightly modified, but they come off of this line, all right? So the key here, let me see if I can figure out how to make a new slide here. They've changed the software, so just bear with me. Okay. All right, so here's the possibilities. You have 2.3.4 point, right, as a baseline. And you can have nature path where it's just natural mutation, or lab path. Okay. And the way that, you know, during in the lab, they're trying to predict what nature is going to do. So in time one, time zero, let's just say, you have 2.3.44.4. Okay. And in time 10, you might have in nature something like 2.3.4.4b. Okay. Just as a conversational example. Okay. So in the lab, that's in nature. What might happen. All right. Let's say we can teleport to time 10 And we know that this emerged in nature. Okay. So theoretically in the lab, you can manipulate the sequence in such a way to try to figure out what the probability is for it to uh, move towards certain types of versions. Let's say 2.3.4.4. I don't know why my pen isn't working on this. 2.4 C, and there's a certain probability. There is a certain probability for 2.3.4.4 E, right? They're all a little slightly different, right? So you get these different probabilities. And so the lab manipulation through serial passage is trying to figure out what's the highest probability and where nature might be going. Now you can take another path where you can manipulate it and make it supercharged, what I'll call lab plus. And this could be weapon grade. So this is for prediction and of prediction of where nature might go. And then you can there's another path where you can supercharge it and make a weapon grade. All right, so that's what's happening here is this, in this example. Time zero, it's at baselines 2.3.4.4. And then the question is, what can happen in the lab to try what can be done in the lab to try to predict the highest probability of what's going to happen in nature, and to figure out what that means for the livestock. Okay, so let me try to. That's just an overview. So you have 2.3.4.4, and the question is this 2.3.4.4b. All right, how much of this that's in the cattle testing, either in the dairy, in the milk, or through sampling of the cattle, how much of this, and this is the nature path, but potential, and it has a certain probability, right? And then what's the probability of it being a lab sequence, all right, of 2.3.4.4b. I wish they didn't change the software. B, all right, lab. Okay, this is nature pathway. And there's some sort of probability, right? What's the difference? What's the differential? All right. I don't have answers here. I'm just talking through my line of thinking. Now, my gut feeling here is that it is possible that the lab is working on a certain sequence, all right, 2.3.4.4b, and that it's leaked out either by accident or on purpose. And then it's infecting the cattle. Okay, that's a possibility. There's also a possibility that nature mutates naturally in the birds, a sequence that will jump from bird to cat and goats, I believe, right? And that it's similar to lab sequence. Not the same, but similar. Okay. If it's the same, then most likely the leak happened. If it's similar, then there is a probability that this was natural. Okay. Now the question is, what this is relative to base. Now, if there are, I have to take a look at it, right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But my gut feeling here is that there's a higher probability. The probability of nature seems to me to be greater than the probability of lab. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't a lab leak. I'm just saying that the probability at this moment in time seems to be that it is not gain of function leak. Now, again, leak could be on purpose. It could be forced leak, or it could be non-forced leak, accident. All right. Now, that's my train of thought at this time after seeing this new post from Dr. McCall. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that will jump the bandwagon and say that it must be a lab leak, because if you look at people's response to McCall's post, that's where the line of thought is. People are thinking that are posting, they think that it's the lab probability is greater than the nature probability without even looking at the sequence. So that we don't know. We don't know if that's true. It just seems to me at this moment in time, based on the information that is known, that this seems to be the more probable track here. Okay, so I'll take a look at the sequence and see if I can see something that will give us a little bit more definitive perspective on nature versus lab. But just keep in mind that it is very possible that what is done in the laboratory can emerge in nature without a leak. That's the key point that I'm making here. All right, so let me reiterate that. Lab sequence that would cause a jump from bird to cattle, right? That could be a lab. That lab sequence could be that lab sequence can be. I'll use the term correctly predicted. Okay. Okay. but it stays, it stays in the lab. No lab leak, okay? And that nature produced a very similar sequence to the lab, okay? That is what I think is happening, okay? Lab is coming up with a sequence that seems to jump from bird to cattle. This sequence is not supercharged H5N1. It's not. That's for sure. The question is the sequence that was manipulated leaked? All right. So this H5N1 cattle story that's going on right now is not supercharged H5N1. It's not. Okay. That's important. So it's the question though is the lab sequence that was predicted leaked or not leaked? Because what can happen is you can have a natural produced situation that's very similar to the lab sequence, and it just so happens the lab sequence was correct. Especially with predictive analysis, you know, artificial intelligence and all this, that it adds to the probability of the prediction in the lab to be more accurate to what nature will produce. And these things that are happening in multiple states can be explained because of the birds flying around, interstate flight. All right. But if it was a lab leak on purpose, then, you know, it's very possible that they planted them in each state, or they infected birds and let them out, and just the natural flight pattern. All right. I think the key here is that it's hard at this moment in time to say for sure that it's naturally made or lab made with any definitive perspective. I think that the probability is that nature naturally produced similar to a lab sequence is more the higher probable situation, but we don't know for sure. All right, so that's my take on that. How do I end the stop the share, I guess? So that's my take on what McCall posted several hours ago from this recording. So he posted this on a late on April 26th. So I'll try to take a look at the sequence and see what I can discern from it. Thank you for listening and have a nice night. Oh, by the way, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements to help support my work and also to improve your immune system and your health. Thank you for listening and have a nice night. The store's link is in the description of this video. It's called the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening. Have a nice night.